All right, what's going on, everybody? So I just got a message on my Patreon, which is actually more catered to those following along my spiritual journey. But this person asked, how do you recommend starting my podcast? It's extremely easy, but I remember before I started my podcast, I thought it was this big deal. I was really intimidated by it. So I thought I'd make a video here on my third channel talking about how to start a podcast. So I've got gear recommendations, software recommendations. Literally, I'm going to list out everything you need so that you can start a podcast this week, if not today. And first, an important note, if you have the creative desire, the creative impulse to start a podcast, you absolutely should do it. And it's not just about making money from your creative work, it's about following your soul's purpose. And if you feel like you have something that you want to express to the world, you absolutely should do it. And there are so many tools out there these days that are just making it so incredibly easy. And doing a podcast is also just an incredibly fun way to connect with yourself and with others. I've been doing a solo podcast, which is more like a sort of a monologue or like a verbal journal entry about my spiritual journey. Great way to get in touch with myself and really connect with other people out there who are thinking about similar things. I've done a podcast with various guests, which has been really fun, really great way to connect with people. I've done a podcast with my best friend, really great way to deepen our relationship. It's a beautiful medium. So I just wanted to put that out there that if you are feeling that true call to do a podcast, don't be scared. Just start doing it. And that's generally my philosophy with creativity. If you want to do something creative, just start doing it. You don't have to do all this prep. You don't have to have it all figured out. I'm actually a big advocate of starting your creative project before you even think of a name for it. So start your podcast before you know what to name your podcast. Start your clothing brand before you know what to name your clothing brand. On that note, I also want to add, don't let yourself be held back by not knowing what you want your podcast to be about. If you really feel that you want to start a podcast, make your first episode about anything. You don't have to wait to pick the perfect niche and category and topic before you start. I really encourage you to just start. If you're really not sure at all what you want your podcast to be about, what I would recommend, just press record and talk about what's on your mind. Or if you have a friend that you want to do this with, press record and you guys just have a conversation about what's on your mind. You don't need to overcomplicate this. It's more than okay to just get started and figure it out as you go. In fact, that's what I highly recommend because it's a great way to overcome any of those creative blocks that are preventing you from getting started, and it allows you to just put yourself into a state of action. Once you're in a state of action, you will learn and hone as you go. So let's get to it. How should you start a podcast in 2023? Okay, so let's start with gear. Absolutely, there is no reason to let gear hold you back whatsoever at all. When I tell you that you can get started on your podcast today, and I'm going to tell you how you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., you really can get started today. If you're not ready to invest in the microphones, literally record into voice memos on your iPhone. You can do an internal dialogue podcast right now, right when you're done watching this video. You can start your podcast using voice memos on your iPhone. I'm going to highly recommend the Samson Q2U microphone. It's a really cheap microphone that, as you can tell, sounds very professional. I got 2 of these microphones in the bundle that came with this boom arm. In order to record with 2 guests in the same room, at least with a Mac, you're also going to need an audio interface. I have this very popular audio interface called the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, I believe. I'm going to link all the specific gear I'm mentioning down in the description below. If you don't plan on having another guest in the same physical room as you, you actually can just get one Samson Q2U mic, and then you don't need the audio interface at all because you can just plug this mic in directly to your computer with USB. The reason you need the interface if you want to have multiple guests in the same room is that for whatever reason, the computer just can't handle 2 microphone USB inputs at the same time. Both the mics need to be plugged in to the audio interface, and then you plug that audio interface into your computer. This gear will give you an extremely professional sounding podcast out of the box. It's really incredible. So while I recommend these mics and this audio interface, again, you can use your iPhone microphone if you want to. When I started my skateboarding YouTube channel, I used my iPhone 9 or whatever it was at the time to record all my videos. I built my channel up to 10,000 subscribers just recording on my iPhone. You really can start your creative project with whatever you have in the house. Okay, so that's gear. Let's talk for a second about software. I don't want to make this too much of a technical video. This is more meant to be an inspirational video to show you the tools and get you to get started. I'm recording this audio with Garageband on my Mac right now. It's a built-in software. It's pretty easy to use. So on GarageBand, you can fully edit and export your podcast as an MP3. And then once you have that MP3 file, you're ready to put it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you get your podcasts. And it's extremely easy. We'll get into that in just a second. I do just want to mention that I also like to record video of my podcast. So you can record video with any camera, obviously, including your phone. I'm using a Canon M50. And since I've been editing on Adobe Premiere Pro, that's what I'll use. That is kind of an expensive program. I think I'm paying like $60 a month for it, but I'll simply drag in the video, drag in the audio, sync them up, and then I have my video podcast ready to go. Okay, if you want to do remote guests, like over Zoom or something like that, I'm going to put you on an incredible free piece of software. It's called Riverside. Riverside is what I used to record a remote podcast with my best friend when he was living in California and I was living in New York. It is incredibly easy. If you've got an internet connection and a webcam, you can record a podcast with a guest anywhere in the world. You literally just have your conversation on Riverside and it will send you a video file of your podcast conversation. If the software and the editing sounds too intimidating, you can use Riverside and literally just upload the video it gives you raw. Just like that, you're good to go. Seriously, when I tell you that you can start a podcast right now, I'm not joking. When I learned that Riverside existed, I was blown away. I was trying to figure out, how do I record on Zoom? How do I export it? How do I blah, 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 blah. Riverside will do it all for you. It's incredible and it's free. So then, I used to think, whoa, how do I get my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts? Do I need a certain amount of viewers, etc.? No, Spotify for podcasters. You can open your account right now, publish your first episode right now, and it will put it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the podcast networks. Spotify for podcasters. It's perfect. It's easy. It's what I use to upload my podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else. So a really cool thing about Spotify for podcasters is you can also get enabled for monetization very, very quickly. I think once you reach like 500 plays or something like that, don't take my word on that, but it's not too high of a figure. Once you reach a certain amount of plays, you can actually sign up for monetization and you can record an ad for Spotify for podcasters. So literally in your podcast episode, you'll talk about Spotify for podcasters and you'll start making money from that ad based on how many plays your podcast is getting. So that's pretty cool that you can monetize that creativity very, very quickly with that platform. I've been doing that and I've made a nice chunk of change from it. I'm trying to think, is there literally anything else? I feel like that's it. At the bare bones, use your iPhone to record audio, export it to your computer, upload it to Spotify for podcasters, and you've got a public podcast just like that. You can promote it on your personal social media and start getting listeners right away. Again, if you have a creative download, a creative vision, something you want to say, something you want to express, something you want to put out there, don't let any of these blocks hold you back. Yes, you can get the microphones, you can get all this software, but you can also record on your iPhone right now and post it right now. If you have any questions at all about how to start a podcast or anything I brought up in this video, leave it in the comments down below. Also, this is a new channel, so hit the like button. It should help me reach more people so that I can spread the knowledge I've gained over my years of being a content creator. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching and good luck on your podcast, everybody.